Hi. Pride Month is a great time to read books by LGBTQ authors, and today we're talking about Worthy, which is a memoir written by Chris Davis. Chris is lesbian and wrote a memoir about her experiences in the Mormon church. So, Chris was raised in the Mormon church and went on to get married and have children and was very active in the church. When you are a part of the Mormon church, your husband is the head of the household, and your community is other people in the church. So, um, children play with other children in the church. The women are friends with other women in the church. You would be in like knitting groups and sewing circles. If you were doing church activities, it would be like with other people at the church. You socialize with other families or couples from the church. So her whole life was very church focused. And Chris was all in because even though she didn't want to be married or have children, that's what was destined for her through her church upbringing, right? So when she got to a certain age, she was given a document from the church, which was it's part of their church custom, and that was what was foretold for her, that she would be married and have kids and go on to um, be in education, which she did through mission work. And so she was all in because if you're gonna do something, right, you're gonna give it your all. And so Chris writes about what that experience was like and what being part of the church was like. And we learn about her upbringing in Maine and the people who influenced her life, her grandmother and her brother, and what life in rural Maine was like, and how the two things all like meshed together to make Chris the person that she was. And then what the struggles were like, what the struggles of being in a church that didn't support Chris being a lesbian, because the Mormon church believes that um, being LGBTQ makes you a sinner. And so, what that experience was like for her. And so Chris felt like in order to be her true authentic self, there was only one way out, and she had to get out of her marriage. But in order to do that, she couldn't be divorced because she didn't believe in divorce, the church doesn't believe in divorce. And so she felt like she would raise her children to adulthood and then she would end her life because that was the way to exit her marriage, um, which is a tragedy, but that is the lived experience for a lot of people in the LGBTQ community. And so Chris writes about her struggles with her mental health and how she had a mental health crisis. And then eventually her son comes out as being transgender. And she, in her quest to support him, is like, hey, of course I love you. And oh, by the way, I want to share with you this thing about myself. And so she comes out to her son, and he comes out to the church, and the church does not support him. Like 100% unsupportive. And in that, Chris decides to leave the church, and the two of them never go back. And so she decides that she is going to be able to move forward with her life in a different way. And she leaves her marriage and her kids and moves back to her home in Maine. And it's a really powerful and heartbreaking and also beautiful and hopeful story of the struggles that so many LGBTQ people face, from feeling like they can't be their authentic selves to the struggle that they feel when they're not supported in their faith communities, to having mental health challenges because of the internal turmoil that they feel about not being able to be their whole selves, and then how it can all come together so beautifully once they are able to do so. And let me tell you, it was it's not that it was hard to read. I find memoirs sometimes always a little bit hard to read when you're reading about um, people's personal struggles and challenges, because they're just so tender and they're written so raw and honestly. But at the same time, um, Chris has an incredible sense of humor. And because I've had the chance to talk to her, she's also she's very funny, and she has a very contagious like laugh and sense of humor, and that really comes across in this book also. So she writes about this really heavy topic, and on the other hand, she's kind of like trying to lighten it at the same time. So you get that good balance of it as you go through the book, and it ends on a really high and encouraging place. And so it's a really great book. It's not really long. I think it's 180 pages, and then there's some discussion questions at the back. I read it in 2 afternoons, and not the whole afternoon. It was just like a couple hours over 2 afternoons. The text is kind of like big text. This is that document I was telling you about right here. The text is kind of large. It's not a large print, but it has large text. Do you know what I mean? See, like that's the size of the text. So you can read it fairly quickly. And I really encourage you to check it out and to check her out. She is a great person, and I think you would really enjoy her book.